"We have to escort you out of the building." The security guard stood just close enough that I could smell his cologne. My manager wouldn't meet my eyes. My work badge, my name, my photo, my 5 years, was already in his hand, turned face down like something shameful. Across the glass wall, people were still working, laughing, planning the future I was being erased from in real time. "All this," the compliance officer said quietly, "comes from a report filed by a family member." My ears rang, but my body stayed still. Anger wanted to rush out of me, loud, ugly, but I swallowed it whole. I knew that tone, that phrasing, that careful cruelty dressed up as concern. Family member. I didn't ask who. Already knew. My hands didn't shake as I gathered my personal items from my desk. A photo of me at my college graduation. My favorite coffee mug with the chipped handle. The small plant I'd kept alive for 3 years. People pretended not to watch, but I felt every glance. As I signed the temporary suspension form, the compliance officer added, "If these allegations are substantiated, your career here is over." That was the moment I understood the scope of it. My stepmum Elaine had finally done what she'd been threatening for years. "My name is Lucy Ramirez, and I'm 28 years old. Until that Thursday afternoon, I'd been a senior financial analyst at Patterson & Associates, a consulting firm in downtown Seattle. I'd worked there since graduating college, climbing from intern to my current position through long nights and proven results. The woman who destroyed that in one afternoon once told me, in our family living room, that I should be grateful for whatever scraps I was given. I walked out of that building with my belongings in a cardboard box, the security guard following 3 steps behind me like I was dangerous. The Seattle rain started as I reached the parking garage, cold drops mixing with something hot on my face that I refused to acknowledge as tears. I sat in my car for 20 minutes before I could drive. Not crying. Just breathing. Thinking about how Elaine had smiled at Christmas dinner 2 months ago while serving dessert. How she'd asked about my work with that fake interest she wore like expensive perfume. How I'd answered, stupidly trusting, mentioning the upcoming audit I was leading. Every word I'd spoken had been ammunition. I should have known better. I'd known better for years. Our house always felt like it belonged to her. The couch covers Elaine chose in cream and gold. The photos she framed in matching silver. The rules that shifted depending on who they benefited. My dad married Elaine when I was 15, 3 years after my mom died from cancer. He'd been lonely, broken, desperate for someone to fill the silence. Elaine had been patient, kind, understanding at first. She moved into our house within 6 months, bringing her son Kyle from her first marriage. He was 17 then, already failing classes and blaming everyone else. Elaine liked control disguised as order. She'd smile while correcting me, lower her voice when my dad entered, and act wounded whenever I pushed back. Small comments about my clothes, my friends, my choices. Always framed as concern. "Your mother would have wanted you to be more careful," she'd say, weaponizing my grief. By the time I turned 16, I understood her game. She wanted me small, quiet, grateful. She wanted Kyle elevated, excused, protected. And my dad, drowning in his own grief, couldn't see the water rising around me. I learned to keep my achievements quiet and my plans private. At a family dinner during my junior year of college, Elaine announced my internship acceptance before I could. "Lucy's very lucky," she said, patting my arm in front of my dad's extended family. "Some people work harder than others, but connections matter most." Everyone laughed. I smiled with my jaw locked. I'd earned that internship through 3 rounds of interviews and a presentation I'd worked on for weeks. No connections. No luck. Just work Elaine pretended not to see because acknowledging it meant acknowledging I didn't need her. Kyle sat across from me, 21 years old, recently fired from his 3rd job in 2 years. Elaine had already explained to everyone how his boss had been unreasonable, how the schedule had been impossible, how the work environment had been toxic. Never his fault. Never his responsibility. When I graduated with honors, Elaine showed up late to the ceremony and left early. She told relatives I'd been lucky to have my dad's financial support, conveniently forgetting the scholarships I'd earned and the part-time jobs I'd worked. Kyle had dropped out of community college the year before. Elaine called him too creative for traditional education. The favoritism wasn't subtle. Kyle missed rent payments. Elaine covered them. He borrowed money he never repaid. Elaine called it family helping family. He wrecked his car twice in 1 year. Elaine convinced my dad to co-sign a new loan. When I worked late nights to finish my CPA certification, Elaine called me obsessed with money and cold toward family. When I paid my own rent and bought my own car, she told relatives I was too proud to accept help. The double standard was exhausting, but I learned to navigate around it. I stopped sharing good news at family dinners. I kept my achievements off social media where Elaine could see them. I built my life in the spaces she couldn't reach. For years it worked. Then I made a mistake. I mentioned at Sunday dinner that Patterson and Associates was hiring for an entry-level position in operations. Just casual conversation. My dad had asked about work, and I'd answered honestly. Elaine's eyes sharpened. Kyle would be perfect for something like that. I felt the trap closing but couldn't stop it. It's pretty competitive, I said carefully. They usually want specific experience. You could put in a word for him, Elaine pressed. Family should help family. She cornered me in the kitchen while I was washing dishes. About that position at your company, she said. Her voice low enough my dad couldn't hear from the living room. Kyle needs this opportunity. I kept my hands in the soapy water. Elaine, I can't just recommend someone. My credibility matters. Your credibility. She laughed, sharp and cold. You work there because someone gave you a chance once. Now you won't do the same for family. Kyle's resume doesn't match the requirements. They'd reject him immediately. And then I'd look like I don't understand the business. Her face hardened in a way I recognized. The mask was slipping. You've always thought you were better than us, she said. Better than Kyle. Too good to help your own family succeed. That's not fair. Fair. She stepped closer. I'll tell you what's fair. Careers end faster than you think, Lucy. One wrong step, one bad reputation, and everything you've built disappears. The threat hung in the air between us. I dried my hands slowly. I'm not recommending Kyle for a position he's not qualified for. That's final. Elaine smiled, but her eyes stayed cold. We'll see. After that night, everything changed. Elaine stopped speaking to me unless witnesses were present. Family gatherings turned tense, filled with long silences and pointed looks. She'd ask my dad about my work, listening carefully to his second-hand updates, never asking me directly. Silence isn't peace. It's planning. I felt her watching, waiting, collecting information. At Christmas, she asked my dad about the big audit I was leading. At Easter, she wanted to know about my promotion timeline. Every question felt like reconnaissance. Kyle started showing up at family dinners with new complaints about the job market, about how connections mattered more than qualifications, about how some people got ahead while others got left behind. Elaine would nod sympathetically, occasionally glancing my way. The narrative was building. I was selfish, ambitious, willing to step on family to climb higher. My dad didn't see it. Or maybe he chose not to. Elaine's just worried about Kyle's future, he said when I tried to explain the tension. You're doing so well. Can't you understand her stress? I stopped trying to explain. I just focused on my work, keeping my head down, building my career one successful project at a time. The allegations were specific. Professional misconduct, abuse of authority, ethical violations. I sat in my apartment that night, reading through the formal suspension letter, and recognized Elaine's fingerprints on every accusation, claiming I'd manipulated audit findings to benefit clients who'd given me gifts, a distortion of the thank you notes I'd mentioned at a family dinner, saying I'd shared confidential information with friends, a twist on my explanation of client confidentiality rules during a conversation about my job, accusing me of creating a hostile work environment, based on absolutely nothing except Elaine's imagination. Every claim echoed something Elaine had once accused me of privately, twisted into formal language, weaponized into career-ending allegations. The report claimed to come from a concerned family member who wished to remain anonymous for fear of retaliation. But the details were too specific, too personal, too perfectly designed to hurt. Called my dad. He answered on the third ring. Did you know Elaine filed a complaint against me at work? Yes. Silence. Dad. She mentioned she was concerned about some things you told her, he said finally. About ethical issues at your company. She said she had a responsibility to report it. My hands tightened around the phone. She lied. Every single accusation is false. Elaine wouldn't lie about something this serious. She absolutely would. This is revenge because I wouldn't recommend Kyle for a job. That's not fair, Lucy. Your stepmom has always wanted the best for you. I laughed, hollow and bitter. She wants me destroyed. And you're helping her do it. That's enough, my dad said, his voice sharp. I won't listen to you attack Elaine. She's your family. She's ruining my career. If you haven't done anything wrong, the investigation will clear you. But maybe you should think about why someone who cares about you felt they needed to report concerns. Hung up. My dad had made his choice years ago, and it wasn't me. I sat on my couch in the dark apartment, my career suspended, my reputation shredded, my family fractured beyond repair. Everything I'd built was crumbling, and Elaine was somewhere celebrating her victory. But I wasn't broken yet. I opened my laptop and started a new document. Timeline of events. If Elaine wanted a fight, she'd get one. I didn't call Elaine. Didn't defend myself on instinct. Didn't beg. I hired a lawyer first thing Friday morning. Stephanie Torres had a reputation for handling employment cases with precision. Her office was small but organized, filled with case files and law books. She listened to my story without interrupting, taking notes in neat handwriting. The accusations are serious, she said when I finished. But they're also vague enough to be difficult to prove. That works in our favor. How? Because if your stepmom can't provide specific evidence, the investigation will expose the holes in her story. We just need to be thorough and patient. I want this investigated completely, I said. Not quietly settled. Not swept away. I want everyone to know the truth. Stephanie studied me for a moment. That's a harder path. It means everything becomes public record. Good. Let people see what she did. All right. Stephanie made a note. Then we start building your defense. Every document, every email, every piece of evidence that contradicts her claims. We'll need your work records, your calendar, your correspondence. He nodded. I have copies of everything. Good. And Lucy. Stephanie's expression was serious. This is going to get worse before it gets better. Your stepmom will escalate. Are you prepared for that? I thought about Elaine's smile across the dinner table, her careful threats, her years of small cruelties. Yes, I said. I'm prepared. I began pulling old messages that weekend. Text exchanges with Elaine where concern slipped into threat. Emails about family events where her tone changed from friendly to cold when I mentioned work successes. Voicemails saved on my old phone where her voice held an edge she thought no one else could hear. Patterns don't lie. People do. I created a spreadsheet documenting every interaction I could remember. Dates, times, witnesses, context. The picture that emerged was clear. Elaine had been building toward this for months, maybe years. Every question about my work had been gathering ammunition. Every family dinner had been an intelligence operation. Every casual conversation had been a trap. I found an email from 6 months ago where Elaine had asked detailed questions about client protocols, just to understand what you do. I'd answered thoroughly, stupidly trusting. Those exact protocols were now twisted into accusations of misconduct in her report. Stephanie reviewed my documentation on Monday morning. This is excellent, she said, scanning through the files. You're showing a pattern of manipulation and strategic information gathering. It supports the argument that her report was retaliatory rather than legitimate. What happens next? We submit this to the investigator. We request a formal interview. And we wait. Waiting was torture. I couldn't work. Couldn't show my face at the office. Couldn't even explain to friends what was happening without violating the investigation's confidentiality requirements. I spent my days in my apartment, organizing evidence and replaying every conversation with Elaine, looking for missed warnings. She'd been so careful. Never threatening in front of witnesses. Never putting the worst threats in writing. Always maintaining plausible deniability. But she'd gotten confident lately. Comfortable. Pride makes people reckless. Through mutual friends, I heard Elaine was telling relatives she was finally protecting the family from Lucy's corruption. She sounded proud, righteous, like she'd done something noble. Kyle was apparently backing her story, though he knew nothing about my actual work. He was telling people I'd become arrogant and power-hungry, that I'd refused to help family while advancing my own interests. The narrative was spreading through our extended family like poison. My phone stayed quiet. No calls from cousins, aunts, uncles. People I'd known my whole life were choosing silence, either believing Elaine's lies or afraid to get involved. Only my dad's sister, Aunt Maria, reached out. "I don't believe it," she said simply. "Whatever Elaine's saying, I don't believe it. You're not capable of what she's describing." I cried for the first time since the suspension. 2 weeks into the investigation, Stephanie called. "Patterson and Associates brought in an external investigator," she said. "That's actually good news." "How?" "It means they're taking this seriously enough to want an unbiased review. Internal investigations can get messy. External ones follow stricter protocols." The investigator, Vincent Shaw, contacted me 3 days later. His voice was neutral, professional, impossible to read. "I'll need to interview you under oath," he said. "Your attorney can be present. We'll schedule it for next week." "What about Elaine? When does she have to answer questions?" "She's already provided her initial statement. I'll be following up with her as well." Something in his tone made me pause. "You sound skeptical." Brief silence. "I'm thorough, Ms. Ramirez. That's all." After we hung up, Stephanie looked thoughtful. "External investigators don't waste time on frivolous complaints," she said. "If Shaw is being thorough, he's already found something that doesn't add up." "Like what?" "Like inconsistencies in her story. Gaps in her evidence. Claims that don't match the documentary record." Hope felt dangerous, but I let myself feel it anyway. My interview lasted 4 hours. Vincent Shaw sat across from me in a neutral meeting room, recording equipment between us, asking questions that felt like scalpels. "Walk me through your typical audit process. Describe your relationship with clients. Explain your company's gift policy." Every answer I gave was backed by documentation. Email chains. Procedure manuals. Work product samples. I'd prepared for weeks, and it showed. Shaw's expression never changed, but I caught him making notes when my answers directly contradicted Elaine's accusations. "Your stepmom claims you shared confidential client information at a family gathering," he said, specifically discussing the Henderson account by name. "I never mentioned any client by name at family events. Ever. It's against company policy, and I'm careful about that boundary." She was very specific about the date. December 18th. Sunday dinner. I pulled out my calendar. I wasn't at Sunday dinner on December 18th. I was in Portland for a conference. I have hotel receipts and conference registration. Shaw made a note. "Do you know why she would place you at that dinner?" "Because she wanted to. Because the truth didn't matter." 2 days after my interview, Shaw contacted Stephanie. "He wants to interview Elaine again," Stephanie told me. "Under oath this time. And he's requested documentation she apparently didn't provide in her initial complaint." "What kind of documentation?" "Evidence supporting her claims. Dates, witnesses, specifics. The things you'd expect in a legitimate misconduct report." felt something shift. She doesn't have any. Probably not. But now she has to either produce it or admit she was lying. The second interview was scheduled for the following week. I wasn't allowed to attend, but Stephanie had contacts who kept her informed. It didn't go well for her, Stephanie reported afterward. Shaw asked for documentation of the incident she described. She couldn't provide any. Then he asked about specific dates, and her answers contradicted her written statement. What did she say? She tried to amend her testimony. Said she'd been mistaken about certain details but that the general pattern of your misconduct was still true. That's not how accusations work. No, Stephanie agreed. It's not. That night my dad called. The investigators want to talk to me, he said. About Elaine's report. Waited. Lucy, what's going on? Elaine seems worried. She should be. She filed false accusations, and now she has to answer for them. Shaw's investigation expanded. He contacted my colleagues at Patterson & Associates, reviewed my personnel file, examined my work product from the past 3 years. Every interview supported my version of events. My manager described me as meticulous about ethical boundaries. My team members called me professional and fair. Clients I'd worked with provided written statements about my conduct. The evidence against me was non-existent. The evidence of Elaine's malicious intent was growing. Shaw discovered something else during his investigation. This wasn't Elaine's first complaint. She has a pattern, Stephanie told me during a strategy session. Anonymous reports about neighbors, former co-workers, even people from her church, all with similar characteristics, specific enough to cause problems but vague enough to be hard to disprove. How did Shaw find that? Good investigative work. Once he started looking into her background, the pattern emerged. She uses complaints as weapons when she feels threatened or wants revenge. I thought about all the times Elaine had mentioned conflicts with neighbors, problems at work, disagreements at church. How she always positioned herself as the victim of unreasonable people. Now I understood. Those people had probably just said no to her. Shaw interviewed Elaine a third time. This session was different. He asked about her other complaints, her relationship with me, her son's job search. Have you ever filed similar reports against others? He asked. According to the transcript Stephanie obtained, Elaine hesitated. Too long. I've reported legitimate concerns when necessary, she'd finally answered. How many times in the past 5 years? I don't keep track. 7 times, Ms. Ramirez. 7 anonymous complaints filed against 7 different people. Would you like to explain that pattern? The transcript showed another long pause. Those were all legitimate. Were they? Because I've spoken with 3 of those individuals. None of the complaints were substantiated. In fact, 2 of them resulted in findings of false reporting. Elaine had tried to redirect, talking about her duty to report concerns, her responsibility to protect others. But Shaw kept pushing. Did your stepdaughter refuse to help your son get a job at her company? That's not relevant. I think it's very relevant. I think you filed this complaint to punish Lucy for setting professional boundaries. That's absurd. Is it? Because your complaint was filed 2 days after she declined to recommend your son. That's quite a coincidence. The investigation took a turn I hadn't expected. Shaw found emails. Not mine, Elaine's. She'd apparently discussed her plan to expose Lucy's corruption with several friends. The emails contained details about how she'd gathered information at family dinners, how she'd framed her observations to sound concerning, how she'd timed the complaint for maximum damage. One email, sent to a friend 3 days before she filed the report, was particularly damning. Lucy thinks she's untouchable at that company. Time to remind her that family matters more than careers. If I word this correctly, she'll be suspended by Friday. Shaw asked Elaine about the emails during their 4th interview. Those were private communications, she protested. They show premeditation, Shaw responded. They show you deliberately crafted false accusations to harm your stepdaughter's career. I had legitimate concerns. Your emails contradict that. In one, you specifically state you're going to make sure this ends her promotion chances. That's not reporting concerns. That's retaliation. Stephanie called me immediately after seeing the emails. This is over, she said. Shaw has everything he needs. Elaine destroyed herself. My dad called that night, his voice shaking. They're asking questions about Elaine, he said. About her history, her complaints against other people. Lucy, what's happening? Closed my eyes. The truth is happening. Elaine filed a false report, and the investigation proved it. She wouldn't do that. She was trying to protect. Protect what, Dad? Her ego. Her control. This had nothing to do with protecting anyone. It was revenge because I wouldn't bend to her demands. Silence on the other end. They showed me emails, he said quietly. Emails she sent to friends about planning this. I know. I didn't know. I swear, Lucy, I didn't know she would. You chose not to see it. For years, you chose not to see how she treated me. I thought she was just trying to help. She was trying to destroy me. And she almost succeeded. I heard him crying, soft sounds he tried to muffle. What happens now? He asked. Now Elaine faces consequences. And you decide whether you're going to support her lies or acknowledge the truth. She's my wife. And I'm your daughter. The line went quiet. Then, I need time to think. Take all the time you need. I'm done waiting for you to choose me. Hung up. Elaine made one final mistake. Instead of accepting the mounting evidence against her, she doubled down. Filed an additional statement claiming Shaw's investigation was biased, that I'd somehow manipulated the process, that the emails were taken out of context. She couldn't help herself. Control was slipping away, and she grabbed harder. The new statement contradicted her previous ones on multiple points. Dates changed. Details shifted. The story morphed depending on what she thought would sound convincing. Shaw noted every inconsistency. Under oath, Ms. Ramirez, which version of events is accurate? According to the transcript, Elaine fumbled. Tried to explain. Made it worse. I may have been mistaken about some specific dates, but the overall pattern. There is no pattern. Your stepdaughter's record is impeccable. Your accusations are demonstrably false. And your continued attempts to amend your testimony only prove you're lying. The room went quiet. Truth doesn't argue. Wait. Stephanie received Shaw's preliminary findings 3 days later. He's recommending full exoneration for you, she said. And he's forwarding Elaine's case to the company's legal team for potential charges of false reporting and attempted fraud. Fraud. She filed a false complaint intending to harm your employment status. That's legally actionable. I sat back, letting the weight of it settle. After months of fear, uncertainty, and suspended career, I was going to be cleared. And Elaine was going to pay. The final report came 2 weeks later. Definitive findings. Malicious intent confirmed. False reporting substantiated. Abuse of investigative process verified. No evidence of misconduct by Lucy Ramirez. Full reinstatement recommended with back pay. Patterson and Associates issued a formal apology and restored my position immediately. My manager called personally. We should have questioned the allegations more carefully, he said. Your record deserved more trust than we showed. Thank you. We'd like you to return Monday if you're ready. Your team has missed you. I was ready. I'd been ready for months. The company also sent a letter to Elaine, formally notifying her that she was banned from company property and that any future contact would be considered harassment. But that wasn't the end of Elaine's consequences. Elaine faced legal consequences and public exposure. Patterson and Associates referred her case to local authorities. Filing a false report with the intent to harm someone's employment violated several statutes. The prosecutor's office opened an investigation. But before any charges were filed, the story leaked. Someone, I never found out who, shared details of the case on a local professional networking group. Within days, the story spread. Woman files false accusations against stepdaughter to sabotage her career. Investigation exposes pattern of malicious complaints. Elaine's name was attached to every version. Her friends stopped defending her. The emails Shaw had uncovered made that impossible. You can't claim ignorance when someone's written plan is laid out in detail. Her church asked her to step back from volunteer leadership. Her workplace put her on administrative review. People stopped answering her calls. Control evaporates fast once credibility dies. Kyle tried to defend her on social media, but his attempt backfired. People who knew the full story challenged his version. Someone posted excerpts from Elaine's emails. His post was deleted within hours. My dad filed for divorce 3 months later. I returned to work on a Monday morning in early spring. Walking back into Patterson and Associates felt different. People knew what had happened now. The full story had circulated. Not just the accusations but the vindication, the investigation, the truth. Colleagues treated me differently. Not delicately as if I might break. Not with pity. But with respect. Deep, genuine respect. I had survived without begging. Without compromising. Without backing down. My team welcomed me back with a small celebration. Cake, coffee, genuine smiles. My manager announced I was being promoted to lead analyst, a position I'd been tracked for before the suspension. This should have happened months ago, he said. We're making it right. The promotion came with a significant raise and expanded responsibilities. Everything Elaine had tried to destroy, I'd not only kept but grown. At my first team meeting back, a younger analyst approached me after. I just wanted to say, she started, nervous. What you went through, how you handled it, it taught me something about standing up for yourself. Thank you. I hadn't expected that. To be an example. To have meaning beyond my own survival. But maybe that's what happens when you refuse to let someone else write your ending. 6 months after my reinstatement, I received a letter. No return address, but I recognized the handwriting. Lame. I held it for a long moment, considering throwing it away unread. But curiosity won. The letter was 3 pages of justification and blame. She was the victim of a biased investigation. I had manipulated the process. Shaw had been determined to destroy her from the beginning. The divorce was my fault for turning my dad against her. Her ruined reputation was my responsibility for not just accepting her constructive feedback. Not once did she apologize. Not once did she acknowledge the truth. The letter ended with a request. For the sake of family, can we put this behind us? I read it twice, then filed it with all my other documentation from the case. Then I blocked her email address and her phone number. Some people lose access because they chose power over love. They chose control over connection. They chose their ego over everyone else's humanity. Elaine had made her choices years ago, choosing small cruelties and strategic manipulation over genuine relationship. I didn't destroy her life. I simply refused to let her destroy mine. 1 year after the investigation ended, I stood in my new office. Larger, with windows overlooking downtown Seattle, reviewing a presentation for potential clients. Patterson and Associates had promoted me to senior director. I now led a team of 12 analysts and managed some of the firm's largest accounts. The career Elaine tried to end had flourished beyond what I'd imagined possible. My dad and I spoke occasionally now. Careful conversations, rebuilding slowly. He'd apologized, really apologized, for choosing Elaine's version of reality over mine for so many years. I failed you, he'd said during one of our coffee meetings. I was so afraid of being alone again that I let her hurt you. I'm sorry. The apology didn't erase the past, but it opened a door to something new. Aunt Maria called weekly, proud of how I'd handled everything. Kyle had moved to another state, apparently, cutting ties with his mother after the truth came out. And Elaine. I heard she'd moved somewhere quieter, somewhere people didn't know her history. Starting over with a clean slate she didn't deserve. I didn't track her anymore. Didn't think about her. She'd taken up enough space in my life. My assistant knocked on the office door. "Your 3 o'clock is here." I straightened my blazer and grabbed my presentation materials. Professional, confident, thriving. Everything Elaine had tried to prevent. I walked into that meeting clear, steady, and completely free.